148, 149, 150. Hey, Mother, I bet Governor Phillip never had a cake like this.
No, my dear, it was a very different sort of cake that he had to share with his early settlers, wasn't it, Father?
A nasty cake. Iced with plenty of trouble and every slice a bitter problem.
If it hadn't been for Governor Phillip, we wouldn't be keeping up our country's birthday now.
Yes, my dear. Lord Sydney chose the right man to extend the British Empire in Australia.
Yes, I've just been reading about those early days. There's a picture of Governor Phillip with Judge Advocate Collins, just after the reading of the official proclamation.
Your Excellency seems strangely thoughtful on this memorable day. Dreaming of the old homeland?
No, Collins, of this new land. A vision that this means settlement may one day achieve greatness and become the most valuable acquisition Great Britain ever made.
It's wonderful, John, how Governor Phillip's dreams have materialized.
Yes, but we mustn't overlook the men who helped to make them do so. You know, my dear, two of our greatest nation builders were Captain John Macarthur and the Reverend Samuel Marsden. They were the men who laid the foundations of our great national wool industry. Look, Peter, that's Captain John Macarthur there on the right, and that's the Reverend Samuel Marsden. They're at Macarthur's farm at Camden.
Yeah, you see that there? Well, Marsden, as a clergyman, you're a most successful sheep breeder. A little unorthodox, perhaps.
But the diversion is most enlightening and beneficial.
To the colony, my dear. And the privy purse also, The official stipend needs augmenting. By the way, how did you fare with your last clip?
Most satisfying. It realized top prices in London and was classed equal to the finest Saxon.
Good news. If we can increase the export of wool of such quality, it would develop the colony to a great destiny.
Quite so. But how are we going to increase our pastures?
Ah, dear lady, that's the problem. Where are we going to find good pastures among all these rugged mountains that hem us in?
Well, it's my belief that beyond those mountains are lands so boundless that no limits can be placed upon the fine wool sheep that can be raised.
MacArthur's prophetic words were realized by Blaxland, Wentworth, and Lawson. They crossed the mountain barriers and opened up new vistas of greatness for our country. That obelisk over there marks the very spot on which the three stood when they viewed the promised land. So it wasn't very long before the pioneers moved out with their flocks and took up the new pastures.
As one of our poets wrote, the mountains saw them marching by. They faced the all-consuming drought. They could not rest in settled land. Their faces, ever westward bent, beyond the farthest settlement, responding to the challenge cry of better country farther out.
And this better country farther out also proved suitable for wheat farming. But a lot of experimental work had to be done before this could be developed into another great industry. The man who made this his life's work was William John Farrar.
I have, or perhaps I should say, we have been able to breed a drought-resisting wheat to meet these conditions.
Well, that is interesting. Any success so far as the rust problem is concerned?
Oh, yes. Surprising success. The results of my researchers have enabled us to develop a wheat which is, well, practically immune from the ravages of rust and drought. See? That is a sample.
Well, that will enable Australia to take a place amongst the wheat-growing nations of the world.
It is my objective that Australia will not only take her place among the wheat-growing nations, but will lead the world in standards of quality. In this room, all grains are exhaustively tested to determine the commercial values of my new wheats before releasing them to the farmers.
So Farrar turned millions of idle acres into productivity. His name must be coupled with Macarthur and Marsden as the founders of Australia's two great primary industries. The fulfillment of this vision called for grit and determination on the part of the settlers. Their greatest difficulty was transport. Generally, bullock teams were used.
And I don't suppose they covered more than 10 to 15 miles a day.
No, just about that. Then came the revolutionary age of steam, and the slowly turning spokes gave way to the speeding wheels. But that is the story of another day.
The iron wheels of progress sweep on from the era of the foundation layers to the nation builders of today. Let our excursion, then, open at the docks in the great port of Sydney, where products from the vast country lands beyond the cities are pouring into the holds of merchant fleets for shipment to the markets of the world. Last season, Australia produced 144 million bushels of wheat, and 77 million bushels valued at £14 million were exported. The season's wool clip of the Commonwealth will exceed a value of £55 million. New South Wales alone producing more than half of this staggering yield. Unsurpassed in standards of quality, the golden fleece of Australia clothes a large proportion of the peoples of the world. The invention of refrigeration made it possible to export and to feed overseas nations with perishable foodstuffs, such as beef, mutton, and dairying products. Australia produces butter valued at 23 millions, of which she exports nearly one half. Eggs, canned and dried fruits, wines, metals, and minerals are the principal exports, which in the brief span of 150 years have made Australia the most stable and prosperous of nations. So the ceaseless procession of deeply laden argosies, flying the flags of all nations, sets out for the ports of the seven seas. Few ports in the British Empire exceed the volume of shipping which passes in and out of Sydney Harbour. The aggregate gross tonnage this year reached the peak of over 19 million tons, the trade of the port being 7,500,000 tons. And now behold the crowning triumph of transport, man's mastery of the air, with which must be associated the names of those immortal pioneers, Ross Smith, Hinkler, Kingsford Smith, and Charles Alves. Below expand the waterways of Port Jackson, site of the first settlement in Australia. Captain Cook, after planting the British flag at Botany Bay in 1770, sailed past the entrance, which he described as a small inlet. It was left to Captain Phillip, first governor of New South Wales, to find what is generally believed to be the finest harbour in the world. Phillip's momentous voyage from England took 8 months. Today, winged transport has conquered that distance in 10 days. Today, Sydney ranks as the second greatest white city in the British Empire. We have now reached the most memorable spot in Australian history, Circular Quay, the Sydney Cove of Governor Phillip's day. Phillip's prophetic vision of a nation growing from his tiny settlement has been magnificently realized. Hard by Circular Quay is a little old-world square, walled round by stately buildings. Macquarie Place, where stand two interesting links with the past. The obelisk, which marks the spot of Governor Phillip's flagstaff, and from which highways radiating to every part of the mother state are measured. And the anchor of Phillip's flagship, the Sirius. Nearby, the Botanic Gardens, which overlook Farm Cove on the eastern side of Circular Quay, commemorates the site of the beginning of agriculture in Australia. A farm of 9 acres in corn, which Governor Phillip recorded in 1788, lay within the boundaries of the present Botanic Gardens. Beyond this picturesque spot rises the cloud-capped towers of the metropolis. Government House, in its unrivaled setting, completes the panorama. Enjoying the peaceful repose of their beautiful garden are His Excellency the Governor of New South Wales and Lady Wakehurst, with their daughter, Miss Henrietta Loder, and their younger boy, Robert Loder. His Excellency directs attention to one of the main approaches to the city, the world's greatest arch span, across which we hasten to mingle in the whirl, activity, and joyous hubbub of holidaymakers, sightseers, and 1.5 million citizens. Australia's part in the Great War shines in the pages of history. This shrine of beauty, the New South Wales Anzac Memorial, preserves imperishably memories of supreme sacrifice. Immortalized in stone, those who have played a notable part in building the nation look down from the facade of the Lands Building onto historic Macquarie Place. Sir Joseph Banks, Flinders, Oxley, Hume, Sturt, Mitchell, Leichhardt, and many others no less illustrious in our country's name. From Hyde Park, Captain Cook gazes towards the entrance of Sydney Harbour, which he passed by as a small inlet, little knowing that beyond the deceptive entrance lay the finest of harbours, a harbour combining peerless beauty with commercial utility. The mightiest liners and greatest ships of the line may navigate its waters to berth at docks adjacent to city streets. The citizens are justly proud of nature's gift and give over weekends to aquatic sports and recreations. The 200 miles of foreshores are indented with countless coves and reaches, which present ever-changing features of surprise and charm. The broad expanses are a glorious mirror where nature reflects herself in all moods. The harbour is never more beautiful than in the evening sunlight, when the yachts, silhouetted against the scintillating waters, glide homeward, or when cloud shadows mottle the waters with grey and silver. When the sun pierces the clouds with pencil rays, ineffable peace falls. What a contrast when a southerly buster drives up the scud and changes the waters to white crests. The short-lived southerly passes, to leave in its wake an arch of glory and towers of dazzling mist. But sunshine, azure skies, and deep blue waters are the keynotes of colour, which harmonize to make Sydney Harbour so lovely a haven. A delightful 7-mile ferry trip changes the scene to Manly, one of the many popular watering places. Just a few minutes' walk across the Corso from the harbour swimming pool, and the surf tumbling on Manly's ocean strand calls us to join in the fun with the sun-bronzed multitudes. In no other country in the world are to be found such glorious golden sandy beaches. The Pacific littoral presents an almost continuous chain of them along 700 miles of coastline. Many of the finest beaches are within the Sydney metropolitan area. It is due to the magnificent rescue work of the surf life-saving clubs that casualties in the surf are almost negligible. The movement known as the Surf Life-Saving Association of Australia embraces the whole of the Commonwealth and is now the most highly trained voluntary organization in existence. From the nation builders of the city, let us move afield to meet the nation builders on the land, who also have helped to bring to fruition the visions of Phillip, Macarthur, Marsden, Farrer, and other pioneers. Here is manifest some of their effort, the grand parade at the Royal Show, the country's shop window, wherein is displayed the finest in breeding and quality. So we step out to watch the team and the plough turning the broad acres, and to meet the producers who sow the seeds of Australia's prosperity. The farmer, the dairyman, the wheat grower, and the grazier, the breeder of fine wool sheep. The fine merino wool industry, which more than anything else put Australia on the map of the world, did not come into existence by mere chance. The industry, huge as it is today, was founded principally by Captain John Macarthur, who landed here in 1790, and in 1793 founded a flock of sheep at Elizabeth Farm, Rose Hill. The Reverend Samuel Marsden must also be mentioned for his contemporary efforts in sheep breeding. Macarthur's experiments in breeding and crossing with some imported pure merinos demonstrated the possibilities of development. These pure merino importations, which originally came from the Escurial flocks of the Spanish king and which were purchased at £4 a head, were the real foundation of Australia's wool greatness. The story of the development of Australia's sheep flocks through the century is one of the great romances in commercial history. The pioneers of Australian wool builded far better than they knew. Though they lived to see their dreams come true, they did not envisage the day when wool grown under the Southern Cross would provide the bulk of the world's requirements. The 29 sheep at the starting have now increased to over 113 million. As we contemplate these scenes, it would seem indeed as if the echo of Macarthur's prophecy, coming from the dim past, attains its full realization.
It's my opinion that beyond those mountains are lands so boundless that no limits can be placed upon the fine wool sheep that can be raised.
The modern stud animal is in striking contrast to the earlier types, and the secret of Australia's production of recent years is largely in the extra weight and quality of fleece which a century's breeding has developed. At the outset, Macarthur paid £4 per head for his stud rams. Today, grand champions, similar to Coronation Charles of the famous Bundamar stud, who is being shorn with such exquisite care, have changed hands for 5,000 guineas. Just think of it. 5,000 guineas. During the shearing season, the scene around the sheep station is an inspiring one. The quiet routine of grazing life changes to bustle. The shearers, a highly organized body of experts, arrive, and the quiet sheds whir with activity. The average number of sheep shorn per day by a good shearer is 130. When the pens are full, a tally is made, and the respective counts are credited to the individual shearers. Relieved of their heavy winter fleeces, the animals seem imbued with that spring feeling as they leap buoyantly away to jump back into the business of growing more wool. The sorting room is generally adjacent to the shearing section, and here the grading and classifying of the fleeces is carried out by technical experts. These scenes, depicting activities at Windy Station, Quirindi, are characteristic of modern wool-growing practice in Australia. The original merino cut a fleece of 2.5 to 3 pounds per head. Today we have an average of 8 pounds, with individual flocks cutting up to 12 pounds and more. Great credit must be given to our stud breeders for improving standards of quality. The wool is baled, branded according to content, and railed to the nearest selling centre for marketing to the wool-using countries of the world. The clip for the Commonwealth approximates 3,200,000 bales, of which the state of New South Wales contributes a half. Another mighty industry which contributes to the establishment of the Australian nation is mineral wealth. The Commonwealth has yielded gold to the value of £645 million, coal, 200 millions, silver, lead, and zinc taken from the world-famous Broken Hill field aggregate 167 million. Let us tarry to see how this enormous wealth is won. Situated in the extreme west of New South Wales, the Broken Hill lode is worked by the most modern mining plants, including the largest diesel electric power unit in the British Empire. 4,500 men are employed, and the mining city of Broken Hill with its 27,000 inhabitants is directly supported. So we descend into the depths of the silver lode, to emerge from the cage 1,750 feet below the surface. The miners walk out along the main crosscut and then separate into parties to proceed through the maze of drives that lead to their working places. The tunnels of this underground city, from which 50 million tons of ore have been taken, reverberate with the roar of drills as the stoke faces aboard to receive the blasting charges. At the end of the shift, the holes are charged with high explosive. Before the fuses are ignited, the miners leave the workings and ascend to the surface. The ore is trucked from the stopes to the weighbridge, weighed and credited to the particular miners concerned. The trucks are tipped at the ore pocket. The control button pressed, and the winding engine hauls the loaded skip to the surface, where it tips automatically. After crushing, the ore passes through intricate milling processes for the recovery of the metal-bearing material. This is called concentrate. The concentrates containing lead, silver, gold, and zinc are trucked to the Port Pirie works of the Broken Hill Associated Smelters. The process of separating the metals is so fascinating that we will pause at the smelters to look on. After certain initial treatment, the metal-bearing material is treated in blast furnaces. The resultant product, known as base bullion, is tippled into large cast iron kettles, where the first stage in refining is carried out. As the bullion cools, a heavy dross, called copper dross, settles on the surface and is skimmed off. The bullion, minus the copper, after further refining, flows into the desilverizing kettle, where it passes through a deep layer of molten zinc. The zinc becomes enriched in silver and gold, and this alloy is dipped from the kettle and cast into ingots. The alloy is next treated in the furnaces for the recovery of the zinc. At the high temperature, zinc is volatilized and passes to a condenser, where the lower temperature reduces it to a liquid state. While this process is going on, let us follow the stream of pure lead as it flows from the final stage of refinery. The company produces 160,000 tons of lead annually. Now let us return to watch the treatment of the silver-gold alloy. After the final traces of lead and zinc have been driven off in the furnaces, the gold and silver is dipped and poured into flat plates called doré. The doré plates are trucked to the gold parting room. In this room, the gold is electrolytically parted from the silver. Under the electrolytic action, the silver is gradually dissolved from the plates and is deposited as pure silver on carbon plates set at the bottom of each cell. The gold remains behind as a black sludge. The silver is of a high degree of purity. The gold is melted down in a small furnace, and look, you can see it in the bottom of the crucible. The gold is cast into ingots. The approximate value of this ingot is 2,000 pounds. This remarkable picture shows the red-hot ladle dipping from a white-hot furnace the liquid silver. The pure silver is cast into ingots of 1,100 ounces, dressed and weighed for marketing. The door of the strong room opens to disclose a severely commercial scene. Yet these glistening ingots are symbols wherein is crystallized the sum of human effort, skill, and scientific achievement. The average annual production of market silver is 7,921,000 ounces. Here comes the goldsmith to complete his part in the spectacular pageant of metal. This vast enterprise exports 90% of its product overseas. Continuous research has kept this great Australian activity in the forefront of the world's non-ferrous metal industry. The Broken Hill Company, after its proprietary mine has yielded fabulous millions in silver, gold, and lead, turned its attention to steel, eclipsing even the magnitude of its former exploits. Enormous deposits of iron ore at Iron Knob had been leased from the South Australian government. This outcrop proved to be one of the richest and most extensive iron ore deposits in the world. The inexhaustible nature of the Iron Knob deposits provides the means of illimitable expansion for the iron and steel industry, and therefore a virtually impregnable bulwark of national defense. The ore is shipped at the port of Whyalla to the great Newcastle Steelworks. The establishment of the iron and steel works at Newcastle, New South Wales, by the Broken Hill Proprietary Company Limited can only be described as Australia's greatest industrial triumph. Not only does the steel industry employ more labour than any other secondary enterprise, but it is the soil, so to speak, out of which other industries grow. The Newcastle Steelworks has called into being a number of subsidiary industries, which, like their parent, are of national significance. Made in Australia is a synonym which heralds the birth and growth of industry in Australia. Manufacturing industries are playing a vitally important part in the development and prosperity of the Commonwealth. They have added enormously to the wealth of the country, opened new avenues of employment, and are rendering invaluable aid to our primary producers by creating local and profitable markets for their produce. In the general progress, the textile industry has played an important part. The consumption of wool by local markets exceeds 300,000 bales, more than 10% of Australia's enormous wool clip. The local mills are producing materials equal to the world's best. The timber trade is well to the fore among the great key industries. In addition to giving employment to thousands of workers, the industry provides a ready home market for the bulk of lumber hewn in Australian forests. The forests also offer immense potentialities for the manufacture of paper. Australian paper manufacturers are now turning their attention to the production of wood pulp for paper making from the limitless forests of Australian eucalyptus. Rubber is a vital necessity in the development and prosperity of almost every other industry. Huge factories employing thousands now cope with every demand made upon them. Amalgamated Wireless and other factories comply with the entire needs of wireless and broadcasting. The body for practically every motor vehicle sold in the Commonwealth is made in Australia. The whole range of glass manufacture in all its branches is carried out by Australian glass manufacturers. Australia may well be proud that practically the whole of her national requirements, present and future, can be met from her resources within her borders. Containers, canisters and cans, and the cream that is in them, are by no means the least important items that contribute to the growth of industry. Cream from Australia's dairy farms converted into butter yields a financial return of £23 million annually. The Department of Agriculture has established a number of stud herds and instituted an extensive system of instruction and supervision, which ensures that those engaged in the industry are kept in touch with modern development. The rich North Coast district of New South Wales has, through the diligence of its farmers, been turned into a region of full and plenty. The dairy herds browsing on pastures that no sun ever browns keep cream cans full and butter factories churning out prosperity. The countryside, in addition to being a source of great wealth to settlers, is charmingly picturesque. The beautiful undulating country is dominated by shapely Mount Warning, the cloud maker, around which much exquisite magic goes on, reputedly a factor in the abundant rainfall. Drought is unknown in this Garden of Eden, which is the most intensively farmed district in the state. Slopes and summits unsuited to dairying are planted with tropical fruits, particularly bananas, while the river flats are waving with sugarcane. The banana industry is in a flourishing condition and supplies most of the requirements of the home market. The North Coast districts of New South Wales are likewise famous for their timbers. So vital are forests in the economy of nature and of man that the legislature of Australia has wisely reserved large tracts under the title of national forests. 5 million acres of bushlands in New South Wales are dedicated as state forests. holiday time comes to most of us, and as very few value a holiday unless it is accompanied by play, we can choose no better playground than our own country, with its endless variety from tropical jungles to alpine summits. All aboard the excursion train. Our holiday opens at Echo Point, Katoomba, gem of the famous Blue Mountains, 63 miles from Sydney, where hills and valleys echo with the spirit of holiday time. Changes to Blackheath. Further charm is given to the Australian bush by the profusion of unique bush flowers and the expectancy that at any moment the bush lover may gain glimpses of the beautiful birds and animals peculiar to Australia. In our tour, we're not going to be disappointed. That ever-popular family, Mr. and Mrs. Koala Bear, and the little koala bears are holding a gum-tip picnic. The kangaroos and Madam Emu will be there. There'll be lots of fun, and so long as we don't make a noise, we may look on through the undergrowth. So that we may see as much of New South Wales as possible during our brief holiday, let our enjoyment change to rapture as we gaze south along the Illawarra coast from Stanwell Park, 32 miles south of Sydney. The Illawarra district offers all the elements of the perfect resort: accommodation of the best, the joys of the surf, fishing, sightseeing, or whatever the inclination may fancy. The hikers are at Sublime Point, a vantage which happily qualifies the glorious panorama that spreads at our feet. Here is the Garden of Australia Felix, a dreamland of blue sea breaking white on the golden margin of peaceful countryside, one of the most productive districts in the state, for the Illawarra produces coal, steel, timber, and dairying products. The magnificent works of the Australian Iron and Steel Company have been the means of establishing a great industrial centre at Port Kembla. Southward we pursue our interesting tour, through foliage that still persists from the age when coal seams were laid down. So we stop at Kiama, a resort made famous through a remarkable natural feature known as the blowhole. One of our party is pointing to its location. Neptune's thunder heralds the raising of the curtain on the federal capital, the city of Canberra. This fairest of Australian cities is a symbol of nationhood, since it perpetuates the welding together of the Australian peoples in 1901, when the various Australian states federated. Here is established the seat of the legislature and the home of the executive government of the Commonwealth. Canberra in springtime is a snow of blossoms and a wild of flowers. But throughout, the city's beautification scheme has been well conceived, for the seasons round provides a ceaseless pageant of ever-changing colour. In the gardens of Federal Government House, His Excellency, the Governor-General of the Commonwealth, and Lady Gowrie are seen enjoying a leisure hour among the blossoms. Canberra offers much of interest in its unique and inspiring architecture. Oriented in the general layout by Burley Griffin, massive national buildings and institutes of research and culture stand out, gleaming against stretches of green and colourful blossoms. All roads in Canberra lead to Parliament House, an imposing monument to national progress, rising from fine gardens above the dome of the Capitol Hill. Contrast and variety lend enchantment to Australian travel. From the snowy blossoms of the federal White City, we glide on to the white fields of Kosciuszko. Kosciuszko, Australia's greatest altitude, 7,305 feet, is only 12 hours distant from Sydney. It is not generally known that in the Australian Alps are some of the finest ski-running fields in the world. During the season, there is actually more snow on the Southern Alps than in the whole of Switzerland. For 6 months of the year, all the delights and thrills of alpine sports may be enjoyed, while during the summer season, the snow-fed streams provide excellent trout fishing. Come, put on your ski and join in the fun. The accumulated snows of winter melt during the warm season, causing freshets in the rivers. These waters are carried by the Murray and Mitta rivers to the Hume Dam. This huge water conservation scheme ensures a continuous flow in the rivers during the dry season, with great benefit to countless farms and orchards dependent on the muddy waters for irrigation. augmented by tributaries, the waters flow down the Murray, where a scheme involving no less than 26 weirs and locks maintains constant levels. There are several other huge schemes in New South Wales, notably that of Burrenjuck. Through irrigation, thriving towns have come into being, and the desert's dusty face has been changed to a Garden of Eden. It is fitting that this panorama of nation building should attain its climax amid the festal scenes of harvesting. For as a man soweth, so shall he reap. So is it with nations. Our pioneers, in their foresight, planted the seeds of industries most suited to our soil and clime. Those who came after labored zealously to propagate and glorify their work. Today, we are reaping the harvest of this wisdom and carrying on the traditions that have made the nation mighty. The amazing transformation of a country of wild bushland into a highly productive, developed commonwealth in the brief span of 150 years has no parallel in history. Nor could we today be harvesting the benefits of a great past were it not for the fact that our nation builders were imbued with sublime patriotism, so splendidly expressed in the words of Farrar.
It is my objective that Australia will not only take her place among the wheat-growing nations, but will lead the world in standards of quality.
Nor are our peoples unmindful of the beneficence which has been showered down upon our land by the Creator of all things. This lovely scene inspires us with something more than mere admiration. The bounty of the earth impels us to look up to the goodwill that is in the heavens and to say, "We thank thee." Just as those of the past had visions of the greatness of the future, so we, the builders of today, must build towards our nation's mightiness of the morrow. In harmony and concord our voices are raised. God, who made thee mighty, make thee mightier yet.